The facilitator of the next panel, mapping Hallyu Fandom, will be Yoonga Ko. So, and she will take it from here.
Thank you, Natalia. So we're at our third and last session of this afternoon, or today, which is on mapping global Hallyu fandom. And it is my pleasure to introduce the keynote speaker of this session, Dr. WoongJo Chang, who will speak on unpacking cultural hybridity through compressed modernity. I would like to give a brief introduction of Dr. Chang. WoongJo Chang is an associate professor and chair of the Department of Arts and Cultural Management at Hongik University in Seoul, Korea. Before joining Hongik, he taught in the Arts Leadership Program at Seattle University and earned a PhD in Cultural Policy and Arts Administration from The Ohio State University, after studying Performing Arts at Seoul National University. So among many other research areas, Dr. Chang has a special focus on Hallyu, particularly the global cultivation of its fandom. His current interest in Hallyu emphasizes its transgenerationality and transnationality, reflecting Korea's compressed modernity. So I will now turn it over to Dr. Chang.
Thank you, Dr. Ko. I am very honored to be invited here to share my thoughts on Hallyu and what's behind its broad appeal and currency. And I hope to add to efforts to theorize the phenomenon of Hallyu and deepening the discussion of the Hallyu. But first, I must say that I am with you today. I can be with you today in the wake of a shocking threat to Korean democracy last Tuesday. So our president declared, as you know, martial law in response to setbacks for his political agenda, and he apparently believed that Korean citizens would buy his anti-communist rationale and out of supposed nostalgia for authoritarian rule, go along with his power grab. So I'm really happy to be able to report that here today that his bill was immediately opposed by the citizenry and a unanimous vote of the National Assembly. So the president was forced to withdraw his order for martial law, and Koreans preserved our hard-won democracy, I think. So I didn't sleep for several days after Tuesday too. So I begin with this because it dovetails with the theme of my presentation. So it is my contention that the democracy that South Korea has achieved despite, and perhaps because of, its post-war experience of compressed development, along with the resulting cultural hybridity. And it is one of the preconditions for the creation and dynamic development of Hallyu. Furthermore, through Hallyu, South Korea has positioned itself as a global cultural influencer, a shaper of international preferences through the appeal of culture and shared value rather than coercion. So I believe this soft power is deeply rooted in Korea's experience of compressed modernity. I initially developed this talk as an hour-long keynote speech and series of lectures that I delivered since last year, Belgium, the Netherlands, and London. And based on these talks, I have recently completed an article that will be published in an international journal early next year. So in that article and today, I identified the three most important factors that have led to the growth of Hallyu. A compressed modernity first, a vibrant private sector based on citizen-won democracy, and appropriate government intervention. And today, due to time constraints, I will focus primarily on compressed modernity and the resulting transgenerational hybridity. So I'm also going to employ analogies which, along with selected metaphors, will help make this story intuitively understandable in the short time we have today. So specifically, I'm going to use an analogy to Korean foods like bibimbap, kimchi, doenjang, and gochujang, and to explain why Hallyu has gained such resonance around the world. As you may already know, the Korean wave, or Hallyu, is an extraordinary cultural movement that has generated unprecedented recognition and fandom across generations and national boundaries. And through Hallyu, Korea has emerged globally as preeminent center for and major exporter of popular culture. And revenue from Hallyu exports and tourism has become an economic asset for Korea, as well as a source of cultural prestige and soft power on the international stage. The relationship between the fans and the artists of Hallyu has transformed private taste and desire into public, cultural, and political expressions, and it has shown unexpected and unpredictable diffusion across generational boundaries in disparate national and cultural contexts. Scholars have employed various theories to comprehend Hallyu's global resonance. It first gained traction in geographically and culturally close East Asian countries and was explained by cultural proximity theory. As Hallyu's popularity extended worldwide, this notion was replaced by theories of transnationality and hybridity, acknowledging Hallyu's cross-cultural mix. Then the international acclaim of works like Parasite and Squid Game brought attention to universal social issues, signifying a pivotal moment that shifted scholarly focus toward the universality of Hallyu. Yet, there's still a gap in fully understanding Hallyu's hybrid and transnational nature. Here, I propose to examine Hallyu's roots in Korea's rapid modernization and transgenerational cultural dynamism, suggesting that its appeal partially stems from its reflection of digital modernity's complex challenges and cosmopolitanism. Hallyu grows out of an intrinsic hybridity, a blending of generational Korean cultures, which resonates globally, offering something relatable for nationally and generationally diverse audiences. So, what I'm saying is there's something in Hallyu for everyone. So my own story with Hallyu has been an on again, off again relationship. My initial foray into international academic presentations was with a paper titled Korean B-Boys and Advent of the Audience 2.0. I examined how advanced IT culture facilitated the dissemination of hip-hop culture, creating an imagined community and the exchange networks which enabled Korean breakdancers to make a mark on the world scenes. This work eventually led to a 2022 article titled The Return of Prodigal B-Boy, from marginalized subculture to protected Korean cultural institution. So I focused on how the B-Boys gained global recognition to transform themselves from marginalized enfant terrible in Korea to celebrated cultural icons in Korea. In 2012, I presented a paper which delved deeply into transnationality and Hallyu. I explored visuality, cultural memes, the collaborative creation between artists and fans, and how Hallyu's transnationality has been facilitated by IT and supported by the Korean government. A version of this paper was later published in the Journal of Arts and Culture Management. And my focus then shifted toward fandom studies, particularly examining American fans of K-pop while I was teaching at Seattle University. I presented my findings on the powerful role of fan-driven viral marketing, titled Viral Marketing in the Arts, the case of Psy's Gangnam Style. My exploration of fandom continued, and around 2013, I started engaging with BTS fan base ARMY before BTS became global phenomenon. And based on my field research, I published a paper in Critical Culture in which I applied Maffezoli's concept of tribe to analyze the digital, social, organizational, and transnational dimensions of fandom. My research also examining Chinese and French Hallyu fandoms, And after the COVID-19 pandemic, I began to explore the resilience of Hallyu fandom. However, after this series of papers on Hallyu, I found myself at a crossroads, struggling to find a firm concept or theory to fully comprehend the phenomenon of Hallyu. And it was then that I encountered the concept of transgenerationality, compressed development, and compressed modernity, which reinvigorated my interest and provided new perspectives in my research. So today, I argue that Korea's foreshortened trajectory of development since the institution of democratic reforms at the beginning of the 1990s has produced a society that is transgenerationally hybridized, which has resulted in hybrid vigor in Korean cultural expression that has resonated globally. So in other words, Hallyu has emerged from the transgenerational cultural vigor that Korea's experience of compressed modernity has produced to speak to the multiple layered cultural experience of millions in our digitally globalized modernity. For this study, along with these concepts, I have utilized a rich array of qualitative data collected from my previous research, including government documents, news reports, scholarly articles, books, observations, and various interviews with diverse stakeholders, including many CEOs in K-pop companies, K-pop production companies. The Republic of Korea presents one of the most dramatic development stories of the post-World War II era. So evolving from one of the world's poorest nations after Japanese occupation and the Korean War to boasting the world's 12th largest GDP. South Korea has remarkably transitioned from a beneficiary to a donor nation. And in achieving this success, Korean society has undergone compressed cycles of growth, reconfiguration, and multiple developmental permutations along with path from war to uneasy peace, from authoritarian to democratic government, and from poor to rich nation. While this intense economic surge has posed significant social and political challenges, Korea's compressed journey in modernity has also catalyzed dynamic and socially invigorating changes in the cultural sector. The concept compressed modernity, as introduced by sociologist Dr. Chang, provides an analytical framework for understanding the rapid and concentrated development of post-World War II Asian societies, in contrast to the relatively gradual development of modernity in Western society. This concept was introduced first in his 1998 article and detailed and expanded in his 2022 book, The Logic of Compressed Modernity. The concept describes a state where historical changes and social forces converge within a shortened period, exemplified by Korea's rapid industrialization within just 50 years compared to several centuries in the West. And this intense pace of modernization has led to societal tensions and generational conflicts with traditional values colliding with modern progressive ideas. A unique form of modernization has thus emerged, creating various multiple, internal, cross-generational cultures. This cultural plurality, experienced differently by each generation, results in individuals simultaneously experiencing distinct cultural realities in the same nation. So there are 4 generations living in my own house. So my grandmother, my parents, my wife and I, and my 2 sons, we live all together in my one house. So my grandmother's generation, now in their 90s, Korea was the poorest country in the world, emerging from Japanese colonization and devastated by Korean War. They are extremely frugal in all aspects of life. My grandmother always say to me, "Hey, turn off the light." Hey, so my father's generation, now in their 70s, Korea was rapidly industrializing, but still underdeveloped nation. For my generation, Generation X, and the late 40s, Korea was rapidly industrializing, but still underdeveloped. Korea became one of the 4 Asian tigers, a shining star among developing nations. And for my sons, 2 sons, and they are teenagers, Korea is now wealthy, developed countries. They can't understand my mother's, my father's, my grandparents, and even my perspective on Korea. So, in many ways, in each generation in Korea lives in a different Korea. So, this cultural plurality, enforced by hierarchical societal structures and the life stages of individuals and families, is both a challenge and a source of immense creativity. There are so many conflicts, and which is the source of creativity? As you can see, we just had a great story last Tuesday. That's so a comedy, a sad comedy, and that was great narrative to tell. So, and this immense creativity owing to the ferment of compressed development. Many scholars and writers view hybridity as a significant driving force behind Hallyu. However, they are talking about a conventionally conceived hybridity of mixture between distinct cultures. I prefer to employ the analogy that Hallyu is like bibimbap. In this vein, journalist Suki Park has written that the first code of Hallyu is the spirit of bibimbap. She references artist Nam Jun-paik and novelist Oh Young-lee, emphasizing how Korean pop culture mixes various elements to create something new. The level of hybridity is here. This level of hybridity is transnationality. However, Dr. Chang, not me, Dr. Kyung-Suk Chang, his exploration of compressed modernity emphasizes that it leads to a unique blend of traditional values and modern lifestyles, creating a societal landscape where ancient customs and cutting-edge innovations are intertwined, fostering what is effectively an internal, cross-generational, or transgenerational cultural hybridity. For our purpose here, the net result is that Korea, which is often thought of as a homogeneous society, is in fact culturally heterogeneous. I argue here that beyond being an artifact of transnationalization, Hallyu is a globalized manifestation of Korea's experience of compressed modernity and the resultant cross-generational, transgenerational heterogeneity. So thus, Korea's fast follower approach in learning about arts and culture from Europe and North America has led to a unique amalgamation of cultural assumptions and practices, and in which different cultural content has been absorbed and generated at different times by the different generations. In addition to absorbing external influences, Korea's unique cultural heterogeneity is shaped internally by traditional hierarchical Confucian values. In the US and Europe, generational groups such as baby boomers and millennials are named and analyzed, and the tensions between their values and worldviews and their mutual implied and explicit critiques are openly discussed ad nauseam. This is not the case in Korea, where the Confucian value of absolute respect for your elders still precludes any differentiating criticism across generations. Indeed, most Koreans still try not to specifically differentiate the generations that I am positing in my argument here. For example, Koreans group millennials and Gen Z all together as MZ to represent youngsters. It's like 30-year span, and they group them together like MZ. And this confusion of the important social dimensions of generational disallows the separations of age-identified groups as seen in the Western world. So at the same time, Koreans of all ages are much more likely to engage across generations with cultural productions. So while dissent is suppressed, engagement is amplified. So furthermore, Dr. Chang, not me, Dr. Chang also notes that Korean modernization has resulted in a much stronger social role for the family than in the past. This is in marked contrast with the Western experience. Modernization forces, notably the state and chaebols, or Korean conglomerates, strategically utilize the families to maximize economic growth and capital accumulation. This familistic modernity has enabled both economic achievements and facilitate greater transgenerational interaction than seen in the West. It is no accident that in the K-pop groups, rigorous training systems, they see themselves as families. Or that YG Entertainment, one of the big three K-pop entertainment companies, refers to itself as the YG family. The rigid hierarchy and militaristic discipline in Korea's legacy of Confucianism has also shaped the creative juggernaut of Hallyu. As I found in my study of the Korean b-boys, they learned their skills primarily by doing peer training with a group called a crew. While non-Korean crews are essentially activity club, in Korean b-boy training is rooted in a national culture of rigorous militaristic constraints and discipline. One of the b-boys told me they have a kind of military culture. The senior-junior relationship is very important, and they set their own strict rules. Without it, their team cannot survive. While foreign b-boys may work part-time job for living and practicing during their leisure time, Korean b-boys, yes, still they are part-time, but they generally practice for nearly 10 hours a day. Well, these days in idol groups, they practice 12 hours a day. Can you believe that? In a day, 12 hours. This daunting schedule has enabled the remarkable achievements of Korean b-boys in global competitions. A similar ethics of discipline, hierarchy, family cohesiveness, and hard work underpins other Hallyu forms such as the K-pop idols. And internet technology has also been critical to the development of Hallyu, and most obviously, it has provided a globally accessible communication and entertainment technology without which Hallyu would have stayed home. But it also provided a vehicle, a venue outside Korea's internal hierarchical system, in which diverse generational voices could be heard without traditional constraints. The effect has been to see the world with a Korean culture that has turned out to be dramatic and relatable, with unique narratives and stories that resonate with diverse audiences. Thus, taken together, these multiple factors have dovetailed in a crucible of compressed modernity composed of a generationally differentiated fast-follower adoption of Western forms, intertwined with traditional Korean culture. So this has shaped a cultural hybridity of transgenerationally differentiated experiences, an efflorescence of Korean popular culture that speaks to fans worldwide. Last year, I attended a workshop on K-pop production and Hallyu exhibition at the University of Liverpool in UK. A business school professor in the university posed an intriguing question, sharing his experience from an international symposium in Korea. He noticed a palpable sense of apprehension among Korean scholars studying Hallyu. Many expressed fear or concern that Hallyu might soon come to an end. I told him that such fears have existed since I first began studying this field 20 years ago. But it is worth considering where this concern is coming from. What exactly are we afraid of? Why this fear? Why now? So the common sentiment has been that Korea, having never been prominently recognized before, fears returning to the obscurity it experienced 70 years ago. This ties into Francis Fukuyama's concept of group's desire for recognition, which he considers a major source of international conflicts. However, in light of experience of compressed modernity, our fear might stem from grappling with the pain, scars, and wounds inflicted by our abrupt transition and the ongoing challenges, internal and external, that we face. South Korea's current suicide rate is one of the highest in the world, while its birth rate is one of the lowest. That has caused many people to worry about our future, and our growing pains too often manifests as social strife, discrimination, and even hatred against others, which in some contexts has generated anti-Korea sentiment. Yet, over the past 80 years, as Korean has been through the most dramatic ups and downs, we have always found solutions, I think. We have been able to face down strife and hatred and come to embrace and accept our differences, however much it hurts. So thus, the bibimbap culture we have made is a great mix of different values, worldwide talents, energies, and creativity. So Koreans' transgenerationality is our challenge and our strength. It is evidence of our struggle. So it is my hope that rather than fearing that Hallyu will disappear, we as a nation listen to the story that Hallyu tells us about ourselves. We should embrace the pain, scars, and wounds inflicted by our abrupt transition into modernity because they are the crucible that created the conditions for our vibrant and creative culture. We should embrace the fermentation process because, as with food, it gives it a deeper flavor and enhances the nutrition value. We should honor the process of bringing the right ingredients together under the right condition to be fermented. With kimchi, that is combining the food with the right bacteria under optimal temperature and humidity. With culture, it is finding the optimal mix of free democratic expression and government support for culture. Bibimbap is completed by gochujang, the fermented red pepper paste that is added at the end. I argue that when all is said and done, it is Korea's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion that is the gochujang finish for the deep cultural democracy that has enabled the creation of a Hallyu fermented in compressed time to become the wellspring of a widely popular cultural form and the key to healing the rifts in our society. This is why the social and political response to our president's attempts to impose martial law to further his own political agenda is so heartening. Koreans decisively rejected the stultifying, stupid, and sterilizing force of autocracy in favor of the vibrant ferment of the democratic process. My future research will focus on properly managing this fermentation process to preserve the transgenerational vitality and dynamics of Hallyu, while mitigating the conflicts and reducing the painful effects inflicted by our compressed modernity. I will explore ways to promote diversity and institute a framework of cultural governance that supports free yet respectful exchanges across generational, gender, regional, educational, racial, tech, and other divides. So as democracies across the globe face autocratic challenges, I am confident that Korea is well positioned to defend our democracy. And I also believe that arts and culture both are nurtured by democracy and play a key roles in its preservation. And thank you very much for this opportunity to share my thoughts with you.
Thank you you very much, Dr. Chang, and sharing your insights into looking into the success of the Korean wave with contextualized information through Korea's history of compressed modernity. And I'm sure your bibimbap, kimchi, and gochujang analogy has resonated with many of us who love K-food in this room. So we have 5 different speakers in our panel on Korean wave and fandom. So our next speaker is Professor Nora Samosir. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. She's the lecturer of acting and musical theater at LaSalle College of the Arts. Let's see. So she is an educator and researcher, and Nora has taught at primary, secondary, post-secondary, and tertiary levels prior to LaSalle at the National Institute of Education from 1998 to 2005, and the National University of Singapore from 2005 to 2020. She has been an actor, director, voice coach, and dramaturg. So, and her presentation is entitled Consuming the Soft Power of Hallyu.
That's better. Thank you very much for that rather long introduction.
Okay.
But just a little correction, I'm not a professor of any kind. I'm just Nora. My students call me Nora. You can call me Ms. Samosir if you like. Right then, Hallyu. Hallyu's global success in encouraging the consumption of Korean-related products is well known. A report by the Hallyu Foundation and Ministry of Foreign Affairs noted, oopsie, it's not working. Now it's working? Yeah, okay. Noted that, quote, the number of Hallyu fans worldwide in December last year hit 225 million, a 24-fold jump from 9.26 million cited by the inaugural survey in 2012. And up 46 million, 25.8%, from that in 2022. The global market of Hallyu is expected to continue growing since global spending on Korean cultural products is forecast to nearly double to 143 billion US dollars, that's 192 billion Singapore dollars, by 2030. The main vehicles for the consumption of Hallyu are pop music, K-pop, serialized dramas, K-dramas, and films, K-films. Other aspects of South Korean culture, such as the language, the locales, the cuisine, the cosmetics, can also be implicated, especially if, as in the case of fan tourism, locations that have been featured in K-dramas go on to spike an interest in visiting them. Hallyu is recognized as an example of South Korean soft power. The concept of soft power, vis-a-vis Nai, originates from international politics. It refers to a state's use of attraction and appeal as opposed to coercion or military might to shape the preferences of other international actors. As a form of soft power, the products, activities, and artists associated with Hallyu are generally perceived as being non-threatening, likable, and highly desirable. This is facilitated by the fact that Hallyu products and celebrities can be accessed and consumed with relative ease, and ease made possible by the extensive use of social media. The importance of social media in the spread of Hallyu, however, lies not just in the vertical use, where there is convenient access for fans, but just as crucial is that social media encourages fans to interact amongst themselves. And this horizontal relationship creates a sense of community. As fans share their experiences with each other, this reinforces the sense that they are individually as well as collectively engaged in the consumption. Individually as well as collectively engaged in the consumption of something that is both fun and widely appreciated. Thus, to quote Professor Dalyong Jin, whom we saw this morning, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter make it easier for K-pop bands to reach a wider audience in the West, and those fans are turning to the same social networking tools to proclaim their devotion. The various Hallyu commodities are deeply bound to South Korean national identity. However, they are bound in ways that obligate the manifold manifestations of Hallyu to positively promote or at least avoid denigrating Korean culture. For example, the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism's stated mission in its 2024 business plan is, quote, establishing South Korea as a leading global cultural powerhouse with K-culture and fostering citizens' happiness through cultural engagement. This emphasizes the state's awareness that Hallyu can be cultivated as a source of national pride. Artistic activities and products help to increase global interest in the country's culture and history, and this interest is appropriated by the state. Not the state creating it, but appropriated by the state to boost tourism, the economy, and international relations. It is important to clarify that this obligation of national identity does not arise from stipulations that have been made by the South Korean state. In fact, any such impositions by the state would have a counterproductive effect on the soft power success of Hallyu, and by extension, the consumption of its various products. Hallyu works as soft power because the creative industries enjoy artistic autonomy from the state. To quote Bong Joon-ho in an interview on Collider magazine, whose Korean film Parasite, of course everybody knows, won the Oscar for Best Film in 2020, to quote him, "No matter where I am working, I cannot make a film without 100% creative control and final cut. If there is such a guarantee, I can work anywhere." The autonomy enjoyed by the creative industries means that messages or impressions conveyed about South Korea in songs, films, or drama series can be seen as authentic, insofar as these are motivated by artistic and entertainment considerations, as opposed to being political propaganda dictated by the state. To explain why it is that the creative industries are mindful of their own roles and responsibilities in Hallyu's accumulation of soft power, the notion of artistic citizenship is useful. Artistic citizenship is not just about the artistic visions and political commitments of individuals or groups, but especially in the case of Hallyu, is also about national obligation and responsibility. The success of Hallyu lies in the fact that it is a form of artistic citizenship where members of the creative industries themselves accept that there is a need to enhance, in their own various ways, the country's image, even if this is not something explicitly demanded by the state. The members of the creative industries appreciate that the success of Hallyu also benefits them in getting consumers to be more interested in the works that they produced. As stated by Sang Soo-yoon, Consul General of the Republic of Korea in San Francisco, quote, "I am very proud of the contributions of Korean actors, writers, and entertainers. These are cultural diplomats who support South Korea's soft power." The understanding by members of the creative industries that they are, in Yoon's words, cultural diplomats demonstrates that they ultimately also bear responsibility for how the world at large sees South Korea. And the more favorable the global view of South Korea, the more likely there will be strong and continued interest in the country's music, dramas, films, food, tourism, amongst other cultural products. Most scholars of soft power agree that it involves attraction and persuasion. There are, however, disagreements as to whether the notion of soft power is too vague and in need of further specification, whether it refers at all to something substantially different from that of hard power, whether the latter has to do with the ease of coercion via economic and military might. Where the latter has to do with the use of coercion via economic and military might, and whether any claim of soft power at work is really just an instance of hard power being employed and whose coercive nature has merely been disguised. In addressing these issues, we, myself and my co-author, Lionel, note that studies of soft power have tended to be overly focused on the state. It is this state centricity that has motivated concerns that soft power might not represent something significantly different from hard power. However, once the contributions of other actors, such as those in the creative industries and even the fans themselves, are taken into account, then soft power need not always be an extension of hard power. The Hallyu case demonstrates clearly that soft power's success in encouraging consumption can come about when the state works closely with the creative industries whilst respecting the autonomy of the creative industries. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Nora, for the interesting presentation. We have Professor Lionel Wee as our next speaker. No? No?
We said it's the same paper. The two of us
Oh,
noticed.
okay.
Thank you.
Two presentations, but the three of them are presenting together?
presenters for this one.
Okay, but the next presentation is the three of them.
No.
The next is one person. It's just that they wanted to show that he's also part of the.
Oh, okay, got it.
There's
So,
actually one paper.
yeah.
Just ignore my
Apologies. I'm sorry. So this presentation was on behalf of both Nora Samosir and Professor Lionel Wee.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay. I'm still confused. So our next presentation is whom? A separate or together?
Oh no, we've started something.
Gangsim?
We started something.
Okay, got it. It's a total of 4 presentations. All right, so introducing our next speaker, Gangsim. Let me go to her. So Gangsim is a PhD candidate in anthropology at Harvard University. Her research centers on Korean migration to Indonesia from the Pacific War until present. Currently, she is a visiting scholar at the University of Indonesia, an adjunct professor at Jakarta International University, and a researcher at the Indonesian and Korean Cultural Study. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gangsim. Thank you so much for inviting me to this exciting event for launching Hallyu track culture for the global audience. One of the main goals of my presentation today is disaggregate quantified, abstracted, mapped knowledge, and also so that you can see the actual existence of Hallyu on the ground. And the case is Indonesia. My presentation consists of 3 parts: Indonesia, a hub of Hallyu and fandom. Second, 3 undercurrents of Hallyu in Indonesia. First, fandom politics. Second, social media influencers. Third, volunteers. And then conclude with cultural intimacy. And another main goal of my presentation is also showing the blurring boundaries between the production side and the consumer side, and how those prosumers are playing really important role for bringing people together through various sorts of labors, immaterial labors, and affective labors. And they manifest in all different sorts of landscape. So we know BTS, right? Yeah. Do you know which country is home to the largest ARMY fan club?
Indonesia.
Yes, that's right. I know people may be familiar with that because we are now in Singapore, the neighboring country. And about 20% of army were known to reside in Indonesia back in 2020, according to army census. And this is nearly the double the amount of army fans in Mexico, the second one. And if you see this streaming of top 100 K-pop artists by country, first ranked Japan, second United States, third Indonesia, and then followed by Korea. And if you see 17 Spotify top 10 cities with the most monthly listeners on Spotify, you can see 4 cities are located in Indonesia. Based on this, we can fairly say Indonesian fans are behind the K-pop's global fame, right? But how much do we know about fans in Indonesia? And also, we should remember the boundaries of the fans are quite blurry, as you can see through the presentation. K-Wave has been on Indonesian stages since 2009, starting from Rain's Asia Tour concert in Jakarta, and 2012 SM Town World Tour concert, and I was honored to join as a translator back then as an exchange student in Indonesia. And then Blackpink, NCT Dreams, you can just name them. But as I relocated myself to Jakarta last year, I felt something was different. So last year was my 7th visit to Indonesia since 2011. And one renowned Indonesian cultural studies scholar, Surai Nugroho, he said at that juncture, K-Wave in Indonesia has entered a new phase, what he called K-tsunami in Indonesia. And to that point, I still didn't know what he meant. But it was one Grab driver who immediately convinced me. And at this point, I also should disclose, I'm not a Hallyu researcher. The focal point of my research is Korean diaspora in Indonesia. And that Grab driver, who seemed to be in his 60s, told me, as soon as he noticed that I'm from Korea, "Oh, you must know Blackpink. The entire Jakarta was paralyzed. Macet total. Absolute macet, traffic jams, because of 2-day concerts." And indeed, their impact was far more visible than I thought. Starbucks, on the street signs, and everywhere. So I decided to include the K-Wave within the purview of my research. And these are 3 undercurrents that I have identified so far. One is fandom politics in Indonesia. Second, social media influencers. Third, volunteers. These are all intricately related, as you can see. First, K-Wave for political campaigns. You can see K-Wave fans and celebrities appearing on the political campaigns in Indonesia for presidential level. And the right one is the image was generated by Wonderful Indonesia. It's under the Ministry of Tourism in Indonesia. It says, the love for K-Wave has been spread all over in the deep mountains of Indonesia as well. So you can feel the magnitude of the impact of K-Wave in Indonesia and why politicians and supporters of certain political parties are actively deploying K-Wave. And the left image shows kalau di Korea punya Song Joong-ki. If Korea has Song Joong-ki, Indonesia is proud to have Agus Yudhoyono, one politician. And for the presidential election, 2019 and also this year as well, K-Wave stars were all around as well. And you can see Choi Siwon was juxtaposed with Prabowo, current president of Indonesia, and even Korean letters were deployed to recruit Korean fans. And this year's presidential candidate Ganjar Bruno was writing 나도 사랑해, which means I love you too. Who knows what I said? Please leave a comment behind. So this was a way to also attract people's attention. And not only that, we can clearly see Korean celebrities are working hard at the front line of public diplomacy and digital diplomacy. And also, we can see social media influencers increasing impact here and there. This is one example.
Oke, 1, 2, 3.
who doesn't recognize the person who received the light stick? I see. So Lisa, one of the members of Blackpink, was right there. And the person who uploaded this TikTok short form is Irin. She is the biggest TikTok influencer related to Korea in Indonesia at the moment. And you can see that short form had 72 million watch. And about 7.8 million people like this. And you can imagine the TikTok per view pay economy and how that also affect her to rise and do her own business through DIY creative arts and work. And this is just one snippet that shows how social media can play a really important role in the future. So as it shows, as of July 2024, Indonesia has the largest TikTok audience. But interestingly, Indonesia's the social media penetration in Indonesia is relatively low, about 60% this year. So given that there's a huge potential market there, we should also closely observe what's going to lie ahead. And given that fact, it's not surprising to see current President Prabowo appointed Indonesia's biggest social media influencer, Raffi Ahmad, as a presidential special envoy to communicate with the younger generations. And you can also see Raffi's active involvement to support various people, including Korean citizen, but he is currently Indonesia's national soccer team captain, Shin Tae-young, who is known to be the best soccer captain ever in Indonesian history because of the record-breaking scores and records that he made. And other than that, we should also keep in mind the role of volunteers. They exist and manifest in all sorts of forms, but they are less visible. For example, a lot of the Korean agencies that are at the forefront of digital public diplomacy, like Korea Creative Content Agency and Korean Culture Center, they hire Korean content supporters as key supporters, and they basically create their own interesting contents via social media. And you can see some people get awards, and they also bring people offline as well as prosumers of themselves. But if we look at the history of Korean diaspora in Indonesia, I was struck by the fact that a lot of Korean moms and Korean youth have worked so hard throughout generations, which also predates the official establishment of bilateral diplomatic relations between the two countries. Starting from 1960s, people were involved in all sorts of culture exchange programs, as you can see some of these photos. And as we know by now, a lot of fans are indeed at the forefront line to actualize goodwill and mobilize the K-pop stars' good influence. As we can see, the Army Indonesia Peduli Bencana, which was Indonesian army fans who take care of those people who are suffering from natural disasters in Indonesia. With this, we can see that just as hunch, there's a strengthening cultural intimacy between Indonesians and Koreans in general, which transcends beyond K-pop stars and K-pop fans. And we can see K-wave stars working hard as brand ambassadors for all sorts of products in Indonesia, including Bank as well. And you can see life-size images of K-pop stars. And also K-wave and Hangul adorning merchandise, although people may not understand what that Korean letters meant. And you can get Imino in your hand with less than $1. And other than that, if you look at day-to-day Indonesia, have you guys heard about Indomaret? It's basically a mini supermarket. You can find it every corner of Indonesia nowadays. Yep, and there you can also easily find Korean instant noodles, tteokbokki, and other snacks. So I don't have to have nostalgia there. And you can find the pocha. and some shops and restaurants that can make you wonder where you are at now. And people are also constructing Korean village as a touristic destination. And the surprising thing is Koreans are not behind this. It's the local people's initiatives. And you can find Korean bus stop against the backdrop of a Korean audio sound that really makes you think, wow, this feels like Seoul. And you can find street vendors selling tteokbokki as well. Given that, cumulatively, now we can see that it's not surprising to see Indonesia ranked as the largest K-wave consumption, had the largest consumption share in 2020 and second in 2021. And also now that makes us not surprised by this chart. Indonesian public's perception of Korea 2022 data, predominantly overwhelmingly positive overall perception, 83.6% positive, economically advanced, favorable to Indonesia, partner, not competitor, social responsibility worldwide, they have good responsibility, likable. So you can see all these positive perception of Korea in Indonesian social fabric. And this is a survey that I've been conducting to gauge cultural intimacy with Korea. And I asked one question, compared to other countries, to what extent do you feel foreign or unfamiliar with Korea? And as you can see, 53.5% said not foreign at all. And 28.1% is neutral. And 14% said not that foreign. If you compare this data, the following question was this: compared to other faraway region in Indonesia, how do you feel, to what extent do you feel foreign to Korea? So basically comparing remote region within Indonesia with Korea, and 44% people responded neutral, and 27.2% said fairly foreign. So they felt closer to Korea than their own region within Indonesia, which was quite striking for me. So with this, I just want to wrap up my presentation, how this all sorts of manifestation of intercultural exchanges and semiotic mixing inside Indonesia has brought these two people and culture so close. And I hope this will give some thoughts about the actual existence, physical existence of Hallyu on the ground. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gangsim, for your presentation. I knew of Indonesia as one of the top Hallyu markets throughout the world, but it was very interesting to see the actual local manifestations of that. So let me introduce our next speaker, Josephine Choi. She is a research assistant with this project, the global mapping of Korean Wave with LaSalle College of the Arts. She was the Friedrich-Naumann-Foundation for Freedom for Korea Office research assistant before this. And her presentation is on the BTS Love Myself campaign. So over to you, Josephine.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Today I will talk about the power of BTS Love Myself campaign, digital fandom in China, Singapore, and the USA. So in this presentation, let's explore the 4 topics to understand the global influence of BTS and their fandom. So let's talk about BTS physical presence and digital engagement across 3 key countries. BTS has made a global impact, but their journey in different regions varies. In China, they made 6 visits between 2013 and 2016, but rising political tensions and the anti-Hallyu movement have kept them away since. And in Singapore, their visits are limited but memorable, from their first performance in 2014 to a stadium concert in 2019. Meanwhile, the US stands out as a key market, as 39 official visits from 2014 to 2022, including award shows, live concerts, and even appearances at the United Nations. Online Chinese fans stick to domestic platforms due to restrictions. Singaporean fans engage globally, and US fans dominate across diverse platforms. So, BTS Love Myself campaign launched in 2017 with UNICEF, promotes self-acceptance and youth well-being, tackling issues like bullying and violence. Through their music and influence, BTS spreads this message with proceeds from albums and merchandise sales, funding UNICEF programs for children and teens worldwide. At the 73rd and 75th UN General Assemblies in 2018 and 2020, BTS delivered speeches advocating individuality and personal agency. BTS urged young people to speak yourself, empowering them to embrace their story despite societal pressures. So, BTS fandom, also called ARMY, is a vibrant community united by their love for BTS and supporting their causes like the Love Myself campaign. In China, fans connect on Weibo for updates, Bilibili for fan content, and WeChat for private discussions. Singaporean fans engage on YouTube and X for reaction and updates, while Telegram facilitates merchandise exchanges. And US fans are active on YouTube, X, and Reddit, sharing concert vlogs, discussing social issues, and supporting activism. Globally, ARMY embodies self-love, mental health, and social justice, showcasing how digital fandom transcends borders and unites diverse values. ARMY fandoms across China, Singapore, and the US share a deep love for BTS, actively supporting their music and campaign like Love Myself. However, their focus and engagement reflect regional differences. In China, despite the anti-Hallyu sentiment since 2016, fans express overwhelmingly positivity, with 82% of the messages from social media aligned with the Love Myself campaign, showcasing the love and pride for BTS. And in Singapore, fans show gratitude and inclusivity, with 86% of messages resonating with the Love Myself campaign. And in the US, fans are more vocal about social and political issues like Black Lives Matter and racism. While 63% of the messages align with the Love Myself campaign, this lower percentage reflects the broader range of critical discussions within the US fandom, encompassing personal and societal challenges. And together, these fandoms showcase the global reach and diverse impact of BTS' message of self-love and global awareness. So both Chinese and Singaporean BTS fandoms have demonstrated a commitment to liberal universal values such as individual freedom and equality. Despite their cultural and societal context, these fans have used their platforms to challenge traditional norms and advocate for a more inclusive and equitable society. Despite China's collectivist culture, the online discourse surrounding BTS reflects a growing emphasis on individual freedom of thought, belief, and expression. Social media platforms have facilitated a space for open debate and critical thinking, challenging traditional norms and Chinese authority. While Singapore is often perceived as a meritocratic society, the BTS fandom has highlighted issues of inequality and social justice. Fans have actively supported marginalized groups such as migrant workers, demonstrating commitment to human rights and social change. Now let's take a closer look at how BTS engage with social norms through their online comments. In China, despite the anti-Hallyu sentiment, ARMY embodies tolerance and self-reliance. Fans focus on personal growth and positive engagement, with over 1,000 positive messages, far outweighing just 20 negative ones. Their discussions highlight a growing resilience and acceptance in the face of negativity and the anti-Hallyu sentiment. In Singapore, ARMY champions human rights, particularly addressing income inequality and migrant worker rights. For example, a charity Morahay Team SG raised 770 in 2020 for the Migrant Workers Assistance Fund, supporting those impacted by COVID-19. This reflects their commitment to empathy and the social responsibility. And in the US, fans are more vocal advocates for social justice, addressing racial discrimination and inequality. They've supported movements like Black Lives Matter, with a charity group One in an Army raising over $1 million for the cause. This activism underscores their dedication to non-discrimination and individual rights. Globally, Army's efforts showcase how BTS inspire a culture of positivity, advocacy, and meaningful change. Now let's explore how BTS influence intersects with mental frames in the three regions. In China and Singapore, traditionally collectivist societies that prioritize group harmony and family values, there is a noticeable shift toward individualism. Fans increasingly emphasize self-love, self-acceptance, and self-reliance, reflecting the impact of BTS Love Myself campaign on personal values. When it comes to critical thinking, Chinese fans adopt an analytical approach, exploring the factors behind BTS success and questioning the motivation for their United Nations appearances, with both political and promotional angles. While in the US, fans engage in thoughtful discussion about BTS roles as cultural ambassadors, particularly their advocacy against anti-Asian hate. They examine the group's messaging and its broader impact on social justice. So, in the conclusion, the Love Myself campaign has resonated with fans globally, promoting self-love, mental health, and social justice. In China, a collectivist society that highlights Confucian values of social harmony, the comments evoked individual freedom values. In Singapore, a meritocratic society, there was an emphasis on equality and human rights and resonate with the nation's emphasis on community and social responsibility. And last, in the US, a society that prioritizes individualism and self-expression, the comments reflect stronger critical thinking, focusing on non-discrimination and social justice. And that's the end of my presentation. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Josephine, for your presentation. It's interesting to see how the Love Myself campaign has been received differently in different parts of the world. I know for the United States, BTS Army is actually a registered charity that has raised over $1 million for the Black Lives Matter movement. So it's a soft power generator of its own, which is fascinating. So let me introduce our last but not least speaker, WoongJo. He's going to speak on the politics of branding, Korean culture. A little bit about WoongJo is a doctoral candidate in the sociocultural and linguistic anthropology at the University of Chicago, where his research focuses on the nexus of new media, language, and politics. His doctoral dissertation investigates the strategies employed by the contemporary Korean digital media companies in crafting Korean cultural content for global audiences. WoongJo is also a PhD researcher as a part of the Data to Power and Global Mapping of Korean Wave project. So yeah, over to you, WoongJo.
Thank you, Yana, and thank you, Natalia, for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is WoongJo, and I'm a PhD candidate in anthropology at the University of Chicago, and I've been living in Korea, Seoul, since September last year to do my dissertation fieldwork. But I must mention, in case you don't realize, that I'm Singaporean, and I was a graduate of the first batch of students at Yale US College here in Singapore. And in my time there, my late professor, Barney Bate, has inspired me to pursue this path of a PhD in anthropology. So it has come full circle for me to be back in Singapore presenting my dissertation research, which is bittersweet because it's the last year of operation for my alma mater, which will be closed down due to Singaporean politics, which is a fitting occasion, along with the events in South Korea in the past few days, to think about the role of art and education facilitated education in relation to nation-state politics, geopolitics, and how Asia as a category is constructed and experienced. So big reason why I'm standing here today talking about the politics of Korean entertainment is because my parents didn't want me to talk about Singaporean politics. Yeah, so to cut to the chase, my training is in semiotics, which tries to understand how language categories mediate organizational processes and the fabric of daily social life. And in this presentation, I will be exploring why K-pop is not Korean popular music, and to examine the politics of the K in the era of nation pop branding. But first, you may already know this, but in contemporary South Korea, the prefix K has been appended to a broad spectrum of cultural artifacts and commodities, including K-literature, K-beauty, K-fashion, K-travel, K-drama, K-food, K-film, K-everything. This strategy, rooted in government-backed soft power initiatives, seeks to emphasize and foreground the Korean identity of these artifacts, Korean in scare quotes, while embedding them within a global consumerist framework. Functioning as a brand, the K recalibrates and recenters any artifact it is affixed to as a product of South Korea and its people. In this sense, the K serves as a semiotic marker, indexing and representing the Korean nation-state while imbuing its productions with implications of ethno-nationalism. As linguistic anthropologist Konstantin Nikasis describes, my advisor, sorry for screwing up your name, brands as semiotic entities are citational in form, weaving together disparate objects, voices, and identities into a coherent yet symbolic entity that appears to share some intrinsic substance. In the case of the K, this substance not only elevates the artifact it anoints into a desirable commercial good, but also transforms South Korea, the country itself, into a consumable entity. The K commodifies the nation state, inserting it into an ontology of goods that are imagined to be consumed and enjoyed by a global audience. The underlying hope is that foreign consumers, having learned to associate the K with quality and appeal, will increasingly seek out and consume products marked by this symbolic prefix, thus perpetuating the nation branding cycle. The widespread imposition of the K represents a complex act of commodifying cultural artifacts for a global audience, one that is imagined to assign greater value to products branded in South Korea, not because of their intrinsic qualities, but due to their association with quote-unquote Koreanness. The immense global popularity of K-pop has sparked a cascading effect, with other cultural industries in South Korea seeking to capitalize on the trickle-down benefits of an audience cultivated to appreciate and acquire a taste for the K brand. However, the contradictions inherent in K-branding have increasingly highlighted how this framework may misrepresent or even hinder the development and broader appreciation of artistic talent within the Korean popular music industry. So drawing on my ethnographic fieldwork in South Korea this year, I explore how various stakeholders in the Korean music industries navigate both the opportunities and constraints of the K-pop label. There has been ongoing criticism within South Korea about the K prefix as a branding tool to group diverse cultural artifacts and products under a single label. For instance, Professor Son Yu-kyung from Seoul National University has argued that using K literature to market Korean literary works internationally risks overlooking their context-specific richness. Labeling them as K literature, she notes, is unlikely to entice the average global consumer to suddenly start studying Korean literature. Some literary figures have resisted the K literature label, arguing that Korean literature should not be seen as a subset of a global marketing campaign, but as a unique tradition with its own values and contexts. Thus, while the K aims to promote diverse cultural artifacts under a unified nation branding paradigm, it risks flattening and homogenizing the very artifacts it seeks to elevate. So the debate within K-pop, even within K-pop, the category that has propelled South Korea to global cultural prominence, there are concerns about the limitations of the label. K-pop has come to represent the entire Korean music industry, overshadowing the diversity of musical styles and groups within the country. For example, major entertainment companies like SM Entertainment, which focuses on polished Europop sounds, YG Entertainment, which emphasizes rap, and JYP Entertainment, which leans towards R&B, all produce music that would traditionally fall into different genres if they were created by Western artists. Yet, they are all grouped under the single label of K-pop. This prototypical definition of K-pop, as well produce high-octane tracks performed with synchronized choreography by single-gender groups, is itself being challenged by industry leaders who view themselves not merely as pushing the boundaries of K-pop, but as redefining and innovating within the broader realm of global pop music. Bang Si-hyuk, chairperson of Hype Entertainment, has suggested removing the K from K-pop to appeal to a broader global audience. Hype's new global girl group, Cat's Eye, exemplifies this vision. Hype Entertainment is not alone in wanting to break out of the genre expectations and limitations of K-pop to attract new audiences. Earlier this year, when the Data to Power research team visited the Korea Creative Content Agency, or KOCA, a KOCA government official shared that SM Entertainment protested the labeling of EXO as a K-pop product in a KOCA survey report, signaling how established companies want their artists to transcend the frame of Korean soft power and be seen on their own virtues. At the same time, however, the official mentioned that smaller K-pop companies, which lack established brands, often embrace the K-pop label to gain visibility, highlighting the power asymmetries within the industry and the complex social political dynamics tied to K-pop as a category. For smaller record labels and independent artists, the global success of K-pop has been both a blessing and a curse. A CEO of a record label explained to me that his company produces Korean popular music, 한국 대중음악, but not K-pop. K-pop. Here, I would like all of you to notice that what he pointed out. As an English term, K-pop is an abbreviation of and treated as synonymous with Korean popular music. But in Korean, K-pop is not an abbreviation of 한국 대중음악. He noted that K-pop refers to idol group music created through the trainee system, whereas his artists operate outside that system. In contrast to the centralized production models of K-pop companies, the artists that he manages maintain creative autonomy over their work, which do not rely on polished choreography or high-budget music videos. In another interview, a CEO of a record label managing beatboxing artists acknowledged that K-pop's global success has opened doors for Korean musicians to collaborate with Western artists and companies. However, he expressed frustration that his company's music is often misclassified as K-pop, forcing it to compete on the same distribution platforms, for example, Spotify and YouTube, as mainstream idol music. In response, he has joined a growing collective of indie artists advocating for the recognition of alternative genres such as K-R&B and K-indie. His hope is that this movement will encourage global audiences to recognize the diversity of the Korean music industry beyond the confines of K-pop and explore the work of non-idol Korean artists. Interestingly, if y'all will note, the proposed solution to the limitations of K-pop branding is the introduction of more K-genres. Here, the analogy that comes to mind is the proliferation of identity categories in sexual politics from LGBT to LGBTQIA+, with the plus here representing the inability of existing categories to represent the diversity of humanity. In the same vein, in K-pop, whether this proliferation of additional K-labels can successfully establish new channels of interest and distribution or impose new constraints on Korean artists remains to be seen. So in conclusion, the global rise of K-pop has elevated the visibility of Korean culture, but has also created challenges that demand critical examination. The term K-pop has become more than a genre. It's a label that commodifies, categorizes, and establishes specific routes for the production, consumption, and distribution of music. However, this label can obscure the individuality of the people, art forms, and processes it claims to represent. Scholars, and all of us, must consider the broader implications of K-pop as a genre and interrogate how it anoints certain cultural products with value while marginalizing others. Disentangling the label of K-pop from the music and artists it encompasses provides an opportunity to theorize the very nature of a genre, not merely as a descriptive category, but as a dynamic system of power that structures cultural production and consumption on a global scale. So to end my presentation, I will pose this open question. What is K-pop when no single Korean party seems to be in control of this label? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ria. It's fascinating to look into the sort of more marginalized genres within the Korean popular music outside of the idol groups. So now I would like to invite our two discussants for this session. Professor J. Patrick Williams, Associate Professor, School of Social Sciences at Nanyang Technological University, and Professor So-won Ji, who is the convener of the Korean Language Program at the National University of Singapore. So why don't we first hear from our discussants on any kind of feedbacks or thoughts, questions about the presentations that we just heard. Let's start with you, Patrick.
Okay, I thank you very much for the invitation to be here today. I'm cognizant of time. I started writing notes. I thought I'd say a few things. I hope this doesn't turn into too much. But I just want to read through quickly the notes I've been taking for the last half hour. It's very interesting to me. I appreciate the early reference in this session to Howard Becker and Pierre Bourdieu, and to questions about definitions of culture. Because as a cultural sociologist myself, as well as a social psychologist, it asks me, or it begs the question of to what extent do we assume to know what K-pop means? And we came full circle just now with some questions about that. This is just what Wee Young asks when bringing up the so-called essential features of the K in Korean branding, and the symbolic significance of the term K-pop itself and what it means. So when we think about K-pop, right, what are I've been sitting here thinking for the last half hour, what are the boundaries of that? What does that term mean? How is it fixed? Is it fixed to political or national structures? Is it fixed to ethnicity? Is it fixed to language? Is it fixed to place? Versus, is it fixed to patterned forms of audiovisual production? Is it about music and film? Interestingly, I haven't heard anything about esports today, although 15 years ago, Korea led the way in that. Is it more about generation? And so the idea of multi-generational household and how people across age groups connect to what K-pop means. Is it about taste? Is it about parasocial relationships? Is it about consumer industries and strategies? Is it about algorithmic processes? Right? So these are the things that I've been thinking about as I listen today. What are the benefits and versus constraints of imagining K-pop in multicultural versus in fan cultural terms? What about thinking about it as a macro level versus micro level processes, which we've seen both of in the talks today? What does it mean to think about it in quantitative versus in qualitative terms, and including epistemologies? My own research, as I said, I'm a social psychologist as well as a cultural sociologist, and most of my work and my own research publications on K-pop have always focused around identity and how fans construct identities in connection to this thing that they define as K-pop. So what does it mean to be a K-pop fan? How can these identities be mapped visually? That's a very interesting question to me. And looking at a lot of the presentations, and especially the visual parts, I'm sitting here asking myself, is identity an objective category or a set of objectified measures that we need to talk about that? Or is K-pop a personal or a K-pop identity or a fan identity, something that's more personal, something that's more embodied, something that's maybe more subjective or intersubjective. As Gangsim brought up in her talk, this idea of disaggregating data and highlighting that the notion of fan is actually quite blurry, and bringing up the significance of kind of intimate and subjective experience on the one hand, but then I think more sociologically expanding that to conversations about representation itself and the significance of how we represent, whether it's music, whether it's fan identities, etc. And then Josephine's talk at the end about the Love Yourself campaign and the promotion of agency, I thought that was very interesting in drawing attention to the difference, again, between personal dimensions of identity and identification versus social or categorical conceptualizations of identity. And I think all of this asks us to reflect in the end on whether we need to rely on categorical means or interpersonal or subjective or emotional, for example, socio-emotional ways of constructing K-pop identities and K-pop authenticities. And the last little note I wrote based on the final slide is, do we need to think about K-pop as a genre, as one of the last slides said, or do we need to think about it as a mode, as a way of communicating and as a way of pushing information versus as a different kind of genre in the French version of the word category, right? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Patrick, for dissecting the term identity from different perspectives. I think K is such a tricky term in the policy realm too. You know, soft power is innately associated with a nation and national identity, right? But if K is so much hybridized and doesn't have any ownership, like national ownership anymore, how is it gonna inform policy going forward? So it's an important identity that needs to be unpacked. Going over to you, Soan.
Yes. Okay. First, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Two mics. Yeah, I'm so happy. Thank you so much for having me, Natalia. And actually, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, my department's organizing one international conference. And yesterday, one of the keynote speakers' theme is teachers' well-being. So I should think about the participants' well-being. So I have to go through all my notes, and so that you can, don't be very bored. Okay. First of all, I would like to start my story. As someone who has personally benefited from Hallyu, I'm deeply grateful for the opportunities it has provided. Thanks to the Korean wave, Hallyu, I built a career teaching Korean language, which brought me to Singapore. Hallyu has not only popularized Korean culture globally, but also created pathways for people like me to engage in cultural exchange and education. In my research, I focus on topics like motivation behind the learning language and fostering intercultural competence. Recently, I have been exploring the concept about a mediator, those who bridge the cultures, ideas, and communities. And I believe there is a compelling connection between the Hallyu and the role of mediators. Whether it is through the fandoms or cultural exports or digital platforms, and Hallyu seems to act as a mediator itself, facilitating the mutual understanding and dialogue across the diverse cultures. This symposium has been an eye-opening experience. It has broadened my perspective beyond my current research and highlighted new dimension of Hallyu impact. I believe there is great potential to study how Hallyu serves as a mediator and how it can be further enhanced intercultural dialogue and global connections. And I have quite a number of questions, each, the presenters, but also, but now I context capitalize of the Singapore. And I would like to ask about, the Nora, about how does the Korean wave impact the development of the local arts forms and theater in Singapore? And do you think it fosters competition or collaboration? I'm very, very curious about it. And then other, regarding the, I think the Gangsim, right? And then how do Indonesian the fans interpret or indigenise the aspect of the Hallyu to fit their cultural context, and then also the Josephine's, and then the you also mentioned about the you notice any differences, cultural differences in how the Love Myself campaign was received in China, Singapore, and the USA. However, I also would like ask you about to what extent do you think the campaigns like Love Myself influence perceptions of the South Korea in non-fandom circles? Or yes, is it a conscious effort at cultural diplomats or insider, that kind of things? And then also I would like ask about the other things, but I'm not sure that whether I can go through or I have to stop here. Maybe I have to stop here. Yeah.
Thank you. Should we? Should we take the questions to the reception rather than going around? Because everyone, the presenters and discussants are going to be at the reception, so why don't we take it to, where we can finally get out of this room and actually enjoy our company and, talk more about Korean Wave. So thank you so much for listening to this session and everyone who participated. Do you want to do your closing remarks? I'm going to turn it over to Natalia before we go for some closing remarks.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was such an enriching conversation, looking into Hallyu from so many countries and from so many perspectives. And I learned a lot today in the second part of the symposium from all your papers and all your insights. So I just have a few words to say. So thank you very much for convening this symposium with me, and this is one of the important outputs from the research project that was going on the whole year, right? But we are also thinking about other research outputs, and I wanted to share with you the book idea that I have in mind and invite many of you who are interested to contribute to the book. So it's basically pre-call for chapters for the edited collection, and this is a very draft title, Inside the Digital Wave, New and Interdisciplinary Approaches in Hallyu Studies. So this is the book that would basically... we met Professor Dayatusu today. I discussed this idea with him. He is the editor of this book series, Friedrich Internationalizing Media Studies, and he's very much interested to receive the book proposal. The focus on new and interdisciplinary approaches is very, very interesting and refreshing because. The key objectives of the book, of course, is to advance research on the Korean wave. But many of you know that there are already dozens, if not hundreds, of books and articles. For articles, for sure, it's more than hundreds that were published on Korean wave because it's such a phenomenon that attracts so much of academic attention. So, it's already happening. Of course, we want to advance the research on the Korean wave, but we also have some other things on the agenda. First, to develop interdisciplinary approaches and to encourage this interdisciplinary look into that phenomenon. And I think the symposium today really kind of showed that how many these different disciplines can contribute to the study of Korean wave, and also maybe to design and reflect on innovative methodologies that are currently emerging, and maybe of thinking of a way how we can combine qualitative and quantitative research and to reinvent the mixed methodologies. So again, this is a preliminary design of the book, and I just tried to, so like in terms of the chapters outline, so we can look at how global media studies or cultural policy and management, global economics, international relations, urban anthropology, social psychology, social linguistics can all contribute to the study of Hallyu. So it will be this collection of all this, and I think everyone has something to say on that. And it's more about the reflection on how I do my research on Hallyu and what I can say from the perspective of my own discipline. So I'm inviting all interested people to contribute. I will follow up with everyone through email. So if you're interested, let me know, and all your contributions are very, very welcome. Thank you everyone for this amazing discussion today. I think I had a blast. It was one is highlight of my whole year. So thank you everyone. I invite you to continue all your discussions over the glass of wine at the reception right now. So stay a little bit longer. So talk to each other. We raised a lot of questions during 2 sessions, but we didn't have any answers. So I hope we will have all, the discussion continue at least for another half an hour or 1 hour. So stay with us, and thank you again, everyone.